related data. The project continued from 1952 through 1970. The document has been declassified and open to the public since 1969. Over 12,000 UFO reports were compared and studied, resulting in the vast majority being easily explainable by the natural phenomenon. The project presented three conclusions. No UFO ever reported and evaluated had given any indication of a possible threat to national security. The number two was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the project classified as unidentified had represented effects or images impossible to duplicate with modern technology or methods. 3, no evidence to indicate these were evident of extraterrestrial vehicles. In 1953, a recommendation by the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, to the Intelligence Advisory Committee and a review of Project Blue Book resulted in the formation of the Robertson Panel. This panel was instrumental in proceeding of Project Blue Book and arrived at the conclusions listed above are numerous debates and research. 2 films analyzed by the panel, The Great Falls and the Tremington sightings, involved over 1,000 man-hours. The members thoroughly graphed and minutely studied each frame. Their results listed below were incorporated into the project's decision and suitably respond to many other reports. A semi-spherical object can readily produce a reflection of sunlight without blinking through 60 degrees of arc travel. Although no data was available on the albedo of birds or polyethylene balloons in bright sunlight, the apparent motions and sizes and brightnesses of the objects are considered strongly to suggest birds, particularly after the panel viewed a short film showing his reflectivity of seagulls in bright sunlight. 3, the PIL description of the object cited as circular bluish-white in color would be expected in cases of specular reflections of sunlight from convex surfaces where the brilliance of the reflection would obscure other portions of the object. Objects in the Great Fall case were believed to have probably been aircraft and the bright light such reflections. There were no valid reason for the attempt to relate the objects in the Tremington sightings to those in the Great Fall sightings. This may have been due to the misunderstanding in their directive. The objects in the Great Fall sighting are strongly suspected of being reflections of aircraft known to have been in the area. The intensity change in the Tremington lights was too great for the acceptance of the PIL hypothesis that the apparent motion and change in intensity of the lights indicated extremely high speeds and small orbital paths. The apparent lack of guidance of investigators by those familiar with UFO reports and explanations. An analysis of light intensity of objects made from duplicate rather than original film. The original film was noted to have a much lighter background, affecting relative brightness of the object, and the objects appeared much less bright. A method of obtaining data of light intensity appeared faulty because of unsuitability of equipment and questionable assumptions in making averages of readings. No data has been obtained on the sensitivity of the Kodachrome film to light of various intensities using the same camera type at the same lens opening. The hand jitter frequencies obtainable for early part of the Tremington film was not removed from the plots of the single plot, past plots as the end of the film. And in Project Silverbug was America's first flying saucer attempt, as they were looking at the Avro-Canadian VZ-9 Avro car, which was a flying saucer that would try to use propulsion to uplift. And it would cause like a VTOL effect and was to go straight up without having to go forward. But they couldn't find enough power to lift it more than 2 to 3 feet off the ground at the time. And the Army and the Air Force stopped fooling with it, and later it was declassified in 2012 showing this. But if this was to have continued, they could have eventually, with the technologies today, been able to make a better propulsion system. So I would guess the better question that should be asked is, why wouldn't the government release the info on aliens if they had it? They have nothing to fear in releasing the information other than blind stupidity. They have no reason to hold back any of the information on the subject, so there's no reason to. It'd be supremely ignorant to hold any of the pointless information back when in reality it's nothing more than the paranoia of human nature and a wandering mind. And of recent, the U.S. government said that the U.S. government has no evidence that any life exists outside our planet or that an extraterrestrial presence has contacted or engaged any member of the human race. In addition, there is no credible information to suggest that any evidence is being hidden from the public's eye, thus providing even more evidence that the government isn't hiding anything, other than the false hope of all the aliens amongst us, and the government knows about it.
That's good try.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You did. Mute it, please.
Welcome to my speech.
I'm ready for you. I can hear you. Now I can't. I can't hear you now.
Okay. Well, I said earlier, my name is.
I got you. I can hear.
Here, and I'm giving the first speech.
And you're I'm not on the same side.
I'm on the petitioner side.
Okay, don't.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
May it please the court, Your Honor, I, Danielle Thompson, and my partner, Jacob Shaw, represent the citizens today in this very important case. I will speak for the first point of error, and my partner the second point of error, and he will also deliver a short rebuttal. The first point of error is, does the government have information about aliens, and is it keeping it from the public? For this point, we will look at United States federal government documents Politicians have been doing this since the earliest recorded events in history. As was an introduction to the point of error, we would like to turn your attention not towards aliens right now, and their children, the baby boom. There's one hero that is seared into their collective memory. Sorry about that. Parker played Davy Crockett. America went crazy. It was Davy Crockett this and Davy Crockett that, and even a hit record from the title song of TV, the show. Born in the mountaintop in Tennessee, greenest state in the land of free. His rifle and off he goes. Davy Crockett. Killed a bear when he was 3, king of a wild frontier. A man who didn't know fear. What a person. In the mid-1960s, John Wayne, an American icon in his right, starred as Davy Crockett in his movie The Alamo. In this movie, filmed in Bracketville, Texas, Davy Crockett is depicted as battling the Mexican army to his dying breath. However, 7 miles from where I am standing right now, there is a ball bullet State History Museum. There we can see all these wonderful exhibits of Davy Crockett and his legend. We can also see the truth. Davy Crockett didn't kill a bear when he was 3, was not the king of the wild frontier, and did not die fighting the Alamo. Apparently Crockett among several others, surrendered to the Mexican army, and they were taken outside the walls of the mission and they were killed while prisoners. As you can clearly see, the truth is indeed out there, and many times the truth is just the opposite of what we believe it to be. Today, all we ask for you is to keep an open mind and weigh the evidence that we are going to present. To win this point of error, we do not have to prove that aliens exist. All we have to prove is that the government knows much more than they have told the public, and they're keeping it from the public. Now, to go off what our opponent said about Occam's razor and simplicity, we want the truth. The truth is the most simplest form. So to this end, we look at the most documented cases in the history of UFOs. What really happened at Roswell, New Mexico? To prove our point today, I will enter specific evidence from public records or government records that prove beyond a shadow of doubt the government knows about aliens and is keeping it from us. The Roswell incident effectively began on Wednesday, July 2nd, 1947 at approximately 9:50 p.m. when Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot report seeing an oval-shaped UFO from their house at South Penn, Roswell, moving northwest towards a crash site. Dan Wilmot estimated at being about 1,500 feet from 15 to 20 feet in diameter. Wilmot reported that this was during a major thunderstorm, and shortly after seeing the object in the air, Mr. Mac Brazel, ranch farmer of the Foster Ranch in Corona, New Mexico, reports he heard a loud crash. Please cross-apply several facts here. First, it was a weather balloon like the government story explained later. Balloon flying higher above the clouds, would not be hit by hail, it would not make a loud crash upon impact within the earth. On Thursday, July 3rd, 1947, Mac Brazel takes Dee Proctor with him to inspect for fence damage because of the storm. In their travels over the ranch, they come across a debris field littered with great deals of metallic material. They gather up some material, and Mac shows Dee's parents. It was a strange metal-like piece with unusual properties. Mac put a large piece of debris on the shed of the ranch. Please cross-apply. Weather balloons do not have large pieces of unusual metal in them. Saturday, July 5th, 1947, Mac Brazel in Corona, and here's a $3,000 reward for a flying saucer. Cross-apply. Why would someone be offering $3,000 reward for something that didn't exist unless it actually did? On Sunday, July 6, 1947, Mac Brazel showed pieces of a wreckage to Chaves County Sheriff George Wilcox. Wilcox called Roswell Army Airfield and talked to Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer. Marcel drove to the sheriff's office and inspected the wreckage. William Blanchard, Marcel's commanding officer, ordered Marcel to get someone from the counterintelligence corps and to proceed to the ranch with Brazel to collect as much wreckage as they could. Cross-apply. This was a Sunday. The sheriff immediately called AAF, who also immediately appointed both intelligence and counterintelligence officers in the investigation. Would you do this for a simple weather balloon? Would you have these people already on a Sunday if you didn't already know what to be prepared for? Does the government do this all for all weather balloons? Later, that Sunday afternoon, military police arrived at the sheriff's office and collected the wreckage Brazel had left there and delivered the wreckage to the Blanchard's office. The wreckage was then flown to the 8th Air Force Headquarters in Fort Worth, and from there to Washington. Marcel and Cavett accompanied Brazel back to his car and go to the debris field. The two deputies returned to Sheriff Wilcox, having found an area of blackened ground. Marcel and Cavett say the Brazel's ranch and examined the large piece of debris stored in the shed. Monday, July 7, 1947, Marcel and Cavett collected the wreckage from the crash site. After filling Cavett's video with wreckage, Marcel told Cavett to go on ahead and he would collect more of the wreckage, and they would meet later at Roswell AAF. Marcel filled his vehicle with wreckage. On the way back to the airfield, Marcel stopped at home around 1 to 2 a.m. to show his wife and son the strange material he had found. Both his wife, Villa, and his son, Jesse Jr., examined the debris Jesse Sr. had brought home. Jesse Jr. remembered that there was a pink, purple, lavender symbols along the center sections of some of the small metallic I-beams among the debris. Around 4 p.m., Lydia Sleppy at Roswell radio station KSWS began transmitting a story on the teletype machine regarding a crash flying saucer out on the Foster Ranch. Transmission was interrupted, seemingly by the FBI. Tuesday, July 8, 1947, around 11 a.m., Buncher's flying disc to PIO Walter Hutt. Hutt goes into town to deliver his press release to the radio stations and newspapers. His first is the station KGFL, and he gives the release to Frank Joyce. Noon, the information is put on the AP wire. It also was the first flight arrived from Washington, D.C., carrying a special team of photographers. And a 2-hour time difference. That would mean the plane took off from D.C. before 6 that morning. This shows motive on the part of the United States federal government to document something other than a weather balloon. I will pose this question. Does every downed weather balloon get this type of attention? May I please the court? As we've heard from the Exhibit 1 and the first ABC News Radio report about Roswell, Exhibit 1. Your Honor, you listen to the words of Taylor Grant, headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Force has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected as Roswell, New Mexico, and is sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection. Kroth replied, this is an official story before the cover-up began. On July 8, 1947, at 5:26 Eastern Daylight Time, an Associated Press news wire announced that Roswell Army Airfield had reported recovering a flying disc from nearby rancher's property, first found sometime last week, and that it was being flown to higher headquarters. The curious base press release triggered national press frenzy. Later, higher headquarters was to be announced as Brigadier General Roger Ramey, head of the 8th Army Air Force at Fort Worth, Texas. The Roswell 509th Bomb Group was the subcommand of the 8th AAF. It was also announced to be recovered disc was eventually destined for Wright Field, Ohio, home of the Air Material Command of the AAF Aeronautical Research Labs. Within about an hour of the press release, General Ramey began putting out an alternate weather balloon version of the same story. And about 2 hours later, this photo, Your Honor, for Exhibit 2 of the right was taken of General Ramey, crouched down, and his chief to staff, Colonel Thomas DuBois. Please note that the piece of paper held the General Ramey's hand, marked an exhibit with a red box. Ramey repeated this story that what was recovered at Roswell was nothing more than a remains of a weather balloon, and that its aluminum foil radar target kite shown displayed on the General's office floor. Later, Ramey brought in a weather office to make an identification official. Please note that the red box in this picture, and that this shows the letter on the paper in which General Ramey's left hand. We will enter this in later exhibit. The press brought the change of story. Please cross-apply these facts. First, counterintelligence officers had been working this case for several days already. Second, no photos of the wreck were released except these photos. Third, they brought out an old piece of weather balloon. This small weather balloon could not have made a loud enough noise when it landed, nor could have been seen at 1,500 foot in a storm. Just to make sure, the Army and the Navy engaged in a debunking campaign led by counterintelligence. During the following days, which involved weather balloon and radar target demonstrations, the weather balloons, the public was told, explained not only what was found at Roswell, but also accounted for the numerous flying discs or flying saucer sightings that preceded the Roswell events. Please cross-apply the fact that first, reports to the U.S. Army issued information stating a flying disc was recovered, then these reports changed to weather balloons only after General Ramey took over the entire investigation. Cross-apply that the wind was blowing from the west towards the east on July 2nd, 1947, and Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot saw the UFO heading northwest. This would make going into a strong wind and impossible for a weather balloon. However, before General Ramey had taken over, Sheriff Wilcox was in charge of the investigation, and he was the first person to alert the military authorities at nearby Roswell Army Airfield, where Major Jesse Marcel was assigned to investigate. Cross-apply that this happened on Sunday, July 7, 1947. A Sunday, Your Honor. The U.S. Army was already with both intelligence and counterintelligence officers to investigate a crash. Marcel and two counterintelligence corps agents, Sheridan Covet and Louis Rickett, drove to the ranch where Brazel worked to examine and collect the wreckage. It was from their original findings of the crash site of July 7, 1947, the Public Information Office at Roswell AAF made the startling announcement that they had recovered the remains of a flying disc. This is what was published at the Roswell Daily Record on July 8, 1947, Exhibit 3. We see a copy of the Roswell Daily Record from July 8, 1947. capture of a flying saucer. This was the first story in local story that dealt with the facts of the first case at hand. This is totally different from what General Ramey had told the public. However, by the next day, the excitement was over. Exhibit 4. Brigadier General Ramey, who had ordered the wreckage sent to him for examination, Carswell Air Force Base, also known as Fort Worth, held a press conference with Major Marcel present and announced that all hoopla had been over a mistaken weather balloon and nothing more. In Exhibit 4, Roswell Daily Record, July 9, 1947. With Ramey's deflating announcement that Roswell's flying saucer was effectively dead. However, a telegram sent by Ramey to superiors on that same date shows something much more different. Exhibit 5. Here you can see for yourself words from a telegram that General Ramey was holding in his hand. The telegram was photographed, and now you can read some of the words that were in it. Exhibit 5, Ramey's telegram. Please classify the fact that the telegram clearly acknowledges the United States federal government knew more than what they had told the public, and they were telling the public was not true. Your Honor, I'd like to now enter the Exhibit 6, Ramey's telegram enhanced. Quote unquote, it says, and the victims of the wreck in the disc they will ship. The two phrases I consider to be absolutely critical in Ramey's telegram. First of all, most of the words are quite clear, so there is no doubt as to what they are. Second, these phrases thoroughly demolish any pretense that the so-called Roswell incident was about a balloon crash. And the victims of the wreck tells us that there were crash victims, not possible for either military 1947 weather balloon or a modern Air Force Mongol balloon explanation. It tells us that at least some witness stories and bodies about being recovered at Roswell are true. It also destroys the Air Force absurd explanation for bodies of misidentified 1960s. And the disc they will ship tells us that the crash object was being called a disc, not a balloon or any part of a balloon, and that it had an interior with contents worthy of shipment. Balloons are radar targets, what the Air Force is still trying to sell as a misidentifying disc, have no insides with anything that could be shipped. The radar targets, in fact, were two-dimensional balsa wood kites weighing about a few ounces. The balloons had nothing inside but helium gas. Even if every other word in the Ramey memo was contested as incorrect, these two phrases alone are sufficient to tell us that Roswell's events were about to recover bodies in an object called a disc, with an interior compartment containing something important, just as witness had been telling us for nearly the last half century. Clearly, the photograph of evidence that Ramey had in his hands proves that he was saying was wrong and not factually wrong, but was created to cover up and delude the American public. The evidence is enough for a directed verdict on the first point of error. Does the government have information about aliens, and is it keeping it from the public? Does the government have information? Cross-apply the very paper in Ramey's hands. Is the government keeping it from the public? Cross-apply the Roswell cover-up. Cross-apply the fact that the weather balloon fly with the wind was not against the wind. Cross-apply the fact that high altitude weather balloons are shiny or metallic in color and fly above the clouds at a high altitude. Designed not to be seen by people on the ground. In either case, a weather balloon cannot fly against the wind or would not make a loud crash, as witness said. Let's investigate the second aspect of this point a little more. A UFO crashed northwest of Roswell, New Mexico. In the summer of 1947, the military acted quickly and efficiently to recover the debris after its existence was reported by a ranch hand. The debris, unlike anything these highly trained men had ever seen, was flown without delay to at least 3 government installations. A cover story was concocted to explain away the debris and the flurry of activity. It was explained that a weather balloon, one with a radiosonde target device, had been found and temporarily confiscated the personnel of the 509 bomb group. Government officials took reports notes from these desks and warned a radio reporter not to play a recorded interview with the ranch hand. The men who took apart the recovery were told never to talk about the incident. And with a whimper, not a bang, the Roswell incident faded quickly from public view and press scrutiny. Cross-apply Exhibit 3, newspaper headline to be one of the best pieces of evidence of the UFO there's ever been. It is interesting to note that when the paper came out, the Army said that they had captured a flying saucer. But by the next day, the story had been changed to a weather balloon, Exhibit 4. There's no way that the Army would have said they had captured a flying saucer unless they had. The men in the group at Roswell were told it was a Russian spacecraft with midgets aboard that had crashed, and if they ever said anything about it, that they would be tried for treason. The late General Thomas DuBois was a colonel and General Army Chief to staff at 8th Air Force Headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas, in 1947. Before his death in 1992, General DuBois testified that he himself had taken the telephone call from General Clements McClellan at Andrew Army's airfield in Washington, D.C., ordering a cover-up.
I just, you stopped. Everything stopped after she said the word cover up.
Lyndon still lives in Roswell, Mexico. That is to be respected.
I'm afraid that it says Del Val's network bandwidth is low, and I am not hearing you after you said the word cover up.
As well. Sir.
Hello, anybody here there? Are we back to Tennessee? I can't hear you.
Sorry, we were muted.
Okay. I didn't catch the very end of her talk.
Us either.
But I got 99% of it. Good job.
Yeah, tell her it was very good.
Very good.
He met the nurse the next day, and she explained what had been going on at the hospital. She was a very religious person. And she described how she had been called to assist two doctors on several small non-human bodies. She described a terrible smell. One body was in good shape and the other was mangled. Between their she also drew a diagram on a napkin showing the outlines of her features. That meeting was to be their last, as she was transferred to England for a few days. On some distance from the debris field. Researchers were only recently able to confirm the second site because few people about it. According to the witness testimony, this is also the site where the body is not in fear of governmental reprisal, all of their names to be used. A prestigious law firm provides legal counsel to such any witness who might consider going public about the testimony. Attorneys from the firm have already met with several Roswell witnesses. In addition to Glenn Dennis, other witnesses were physically threatened or intimidated. According to the members of Sheriff Wilcox's family, he was told by the military and presence of his wife that he and his entire family would be killed if he ever spoke about what he had seen. The ranch originally discovered the wreckage. Mac Brazel was sequestered by military for almost a week and sworn to secrecy. He never spoke about the incident again, even family. In the months following the incident, his son, Bill Brazel, found and collected a few scraps of material, which he had kept in a cigarette box. The material publicity about Roswell case since 1980. No witness involved in the recovery has ever come forward to collaborate with the weather balloon story. Provide other explanation of that. Both possibilities that the Thrill checked out an explanation for unusual debris, it seems certain someone would have to come forward by it with now. While it is impossible for the Roswell witnesses who have lived in diverse parts of the country have been engaged in perfectly orchestrated long-term hoax with no clear motive. It is unlikely. It is true that there are a few minor gaps and inconsistencies with some of this account, but that is to be expected. There were many individuals involved, and it had a long period of time. Human memory is not perfect. For those familiar with the Roswell evidence, however, it would be hard to imagine in which the core was not opted out. The truth. And what I expected it to do.
Del Val's network bandwidth is low. I'm not hearing you. Just lost the picture.
She's back.
Okay. But the spy agency had lurched off with instrument thought in direction. And
I think that we, as the, I don't know if I'm the judge here, but I think
collection of every available source for me without. Is it disconnected?
It was just like,
Okay, can you hear me? I'm almost on.
I think in the spirit of fairness, we should have both sides should have an equal amount of time, and I think you've exceeded your time. So I think we should go on to our next speaker if there is another speaker. But I'd like to keep this balanced and fair on both sides. So let's go on to what's next.
Hear my internet on.
We don't have another argument. I'm standing up here for preparation of questions.
All right. So in other words, there's only one speaker from Del Val.
You have to nod and ask them. Oh, hold on.
So I have a question. There were two speakers from Tennessee, and there's one speaker from Del Val. Is that true? Can you?
No, there's two.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Shoot.
Hello, can you hear me? Tennessee? I can't hear you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, Tennessee, you're the only person I can hear. Are we finished with the presentation of speakers?
We're finished with our speaking points. Yes, I'm up here for any questions that you have or anything.
And how? So, in other words, will there be any attempt on Tennessee's part to rebut what Del Val said?
Yes, definitely.
Well, let's go and do it.
According to Drake's equation, which you may or may not have heard about, of course you would have if you were looking into the number of civilizations that were being found in the 60s, which of course there were none. Drake's equation is N equals R star times FP times NE times FI times FL times FC times L, where N is the number of civilizations in our galaxy within radio comm distance. R star is the number of star formations in our galaxy per year. FP is the number of stars or planets. NE is the number of planets that could potentially support life. FL is the fraction of planets that actually do develop life. Fi is the fraction of planets that develop civilizations, and FC is the civilizations that develop technology that is able to release detectable signs of existence, and L is the length of time available for each signal. Multiple of these variables are impossible for us to understand. The point of this question, point of this formula, rather, is not for us to figure out how many civilizations there are, but rather for us to question our own understanding of how much we know. Since we cannot possibly understand how many planets actually do support life or how many create civilizations and such like that, we must trust conclusive evidence that is given to us. Without any one such thing, we must trust those who may possess such evidence to be honest with it, and cannot simply assume that because they claim to know nothing that they must be lying.
Is that it?
We have one more statement.
Hello, two more. My statement and then the second speaker. First, I would like to directly address their first speech. Namely, the site I've pulled up here is the United States Government Accountability Office. Now, it gives a list, and I don't think I want to go through the entire thing, it's rather long, about the government information, the official government information on the Roswell incident. Now, most of what they said was very well researched, and much of it is very accurate. However, it should not be to their credit, to the credit of their argument at least, that proving the government lies easily refutes our argument. For example, no one can trust any politician. This is a joke. But moving on, the arguments that they presented, even if they're all accurate, may seem to line up and point to the existence or the presence of UFOs in Roswell. However, it could just as easily be interpreted as to be the presence of a military aircraft of some sort that they were trying to keep secret. And I'm sorry, I'm not good at speaking. I didn't have this written down.
That's good.
Next man's up.
On the evidence of the stuff found in the crash, the SR-71 Blackbird and both the stealth bomber were in a form of, they were testing their flight. So why would you reveal this if it was a actual report? And this was, you were moving into the Cold War with Russia, and you are finally starting to get ahead of them technologically and through your military. Why would you then go ahead and show that, oh, I have this ship, as in the stealth bomber, or not the stealth bomber, but the SR-71 Blackbird, which is a lot faster than it was faster than most ships, or was the fastest. It could move at Mach 1 of its time. And then you had the stealth bomber, which was able to evade any of the sound systems or anything, or radar at that time, because it was flatter and could bend things around it. And also, how can you determine how loud it technically was? And they also did say that it was during a lightning storm. So a bolt of lightning just out of the corner of your eye could technically be anything. Just to a person with a greater imagination, which has been proved throughout history, and even with that Davy Crockett story, is that somebody who's great at telling tall tales can tell really anything and make it truth. That's also with the UFOs. With you can easily use yellow journalism, and it's just a way to sell papers. There's nothing more to it, nothing less. Like during the Spanish-American War, how they would lie. Like they were put into concentration camps, yes, but they made them more severe.
I just got a message from Michael Cunningham that apparently they had two speakers and we only heard one. So I'm wondering if we can go, I got your rebuttal, but I wonder if we can go back to Del Valle and hear their second speaker.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, good. I'm ready. Can we go back to Del Valle?
Yes. Can you hear me all right, Mr. Kroth?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to begin.
All righty.
May it please the court, my name is Jacob Shaw, and I'm addressing the second point of error. He's supposed to follow my part of Thompson's arguments, her evidence and exhibits. Now, I will formally address the second point of error. The public has a right to know exactly what the government knows in this matter. To preface this further, I'd like to present two key rebutting points against our opponent's claims today. The first being when they speak of the ambiguity and nature of objects within the air, including the SR-71 and other examples. Well, regardless of all the ambiguity and regardless of what they say they can and cannot prove, it doesn't change the fact that they can still implicate knowledge to the public and they can still present knowledge to the public. And whether or not aliens exist, that's what we're actually talking about here. What the government knows, what the public knows should be equal. There shouldn't be a dichotomy of sorts in that. Second, they say there's nothing to fear, and therefore it shouldn't be given to the public. Well, that's a huge logical fallacy because that's, as I'll get to and show, that's a huge appeal to authority. They're saying that because the government supposedly has nothing to endanger people, to have a just government, you must distribute all knowledge to the public so that they're also aware of what's going on, because withholding knowledge is actually worse. That would cause, if anything, that would cause more of a harm to society. And that's what we call for today, for all knowledge to be given to the public so that society can be upheld correctly. Which is why the second point of error is carefully crafted and deals much more with power than with any one single event. Therefore, we're going to set up illogical fallacies that the government has created to stop the public's knowledge. In this case, and then look at examples when public figures have began to speak out on the subject. So yes, for the government has created illogical fallacies and failing to tell the public what it fully knows in this matter. First, the government uses the fallacy of speaking for others. Government position has been to deny any reporting of UFOs. As we see in the Ramy incident, yes, federal government takes great pride in trying to change facts to fit a predetermined position. Publicly, they would admit to a weather balloon and then parade out a weather balloon, even when others have seen something much different. If the truth differs from the desired results, the truth will be changed to closely reflect the desired results. This is exactly this fallacy of speaking for others. Second, the U.S. federal government uses the fallacy of a red herring. By changing the subject to a common object like a weather balloon, swamp gas, or something else, the U.S. federal government can dismiss all society as something more than a red herring. Something that takes us off the real problem here. This colorful argument allows the U.S. federal government to skillfully change any dynamics back to their storyline. I ask you, how can 100% of everything that's been seen by Americans since 1947 be explained away to just natural causes? All this fallacy does is try to have chase away a strict scrutiny. The government makes a great many hasty generalizations by trying to marginalize all people who are witnesses as being sort of backwoods people lacking in intelligence or being totally misguided. Many of the people who witnessed the events of Roswell were actually none of these. They kept their stories or passed on to the fifth logical fallacy, confusing the cause and effect. Because the government cannot exist without the people, but in an odd twist, the people can't exist without a government. People are the cause of the government. Government is an effect of people's will. Not the government's will should be forced upon the people. Sixth, the U.S. federal government creates false dichotomy logical fallacy, as I alluded to earlier again, when they set up a lockstep approach to the truth. Either you believe the government and what they say, or you're listening to a crazy person who's not telling the truth. I like to point out that it's the crazy government who's actually lying to us, and it's been lying to us for decades, Your Honor. Seventh, the U.S. federal government creates an appeal to force fallacy when it tries to force everyone to believe their side of the story without regard to any facts contrary to what they give or without any independent collaboration of those facts outside of the government. Sorry about that. Then that opinion becomes reality through their sure enforcement of U.S. federal government power. Eighth, the fallacy of the big lie. If you say something loud enough, long enough, and consistently enough, you believe it. However, even after the U.S. federal government has done this for the past 50 years, it is interesting to note that many Americans are finally getting wise to this critical fallacy. In a 2012 survey of Americans, the National Geographic Africa found that 80% of the people thought the U.S. federal government was holding back on aliens, yet only 36% believed that aliens had even been on this planet. This explains the fallacy completely. The reason why people do not believe that aliens landed in such a high number is that they've been told that they hadn't landed. They had to believe in this lie. Yet when asked another question, the U.S. federal government is hiding information, 80% of them say yes. It's proved that the people know the U.S. federal government is lying, but many people still believe in that lie, and they choose to stay under that veil of ignorance. Now, I'd like to apply this to three different influential people who have experienced UFOs and what's happened to their stories. On April 20th, 2009, CNN ran a story about a former astronaut, man not alone in universe. The story is as follows. Earth Day may fall later this week, but as a former NASA astronaut, Edgar Mitchell and other UFO enthusiasts are concerned, the real story is happening elsewhere. Mitchell, who was part of the 1971 Apollo 14 moon mission, asserted Monday that extraterrestrial life exists, and that the truth is being concealed by the U.S. and other government entities. He delivered his remarks during an appearance at the National Press Club following the conclusion of the 5th Annual X Conference, a meeting of UFO activists and researchers studying the possibility of alien life forms. Mankind has long wondered if we're alone in the universe, but only in our period do we really have evidence. No, we're not alone, Mitchell said. Our destiny, in my opinion, and we might as well get started with it, is to become part of the planetary community. We should be ready to reach out beyond our planet and beyond our solar system to find out what is really going on out there. Mitchell himself grew up in Roswell, New Mexico, which some UFO believers maintain was the site of the UFO crash in 1947. He said residents of his hometown had been hushed and told not to talk about their experience by military authorities. They had been warned of dire consequences if they did so. But, he claimed, they didn't want to go to the grave with their story. They wanted to tell somebody reliable. And being a local boy and having been to the moon, they considered me reliable enough to whisper in my ear the particular story. Roughly 10 years ago, Mitchell claimed, he was finally given an appointment at the Pentagon to discuss what he had been told. An unnamed admiral working for the Joint Chiefs of Staff promised to uncover the truth behind the Roswell story, Mitchell said. The stories of a UFO crash were confirmed, but the admiral was then denied access when he tried to get into the inner workings of that exact process. The same admiral, Mitchell claimed, now denies the story. I urge those who are doubtful, read the books, read the lore, start to understand what is really going on. Because there's really no doubt we're being visited, he said. The universe that we live in is much more wondrous, complex, far-reaching than we have ever been able to know up to this point in time. A NASA spokesman denied the cover-up, saying that NASA does not track UFOs. NASA is not involved in any sort of cover-up about alien life on this planet or anywhere else, period, Michael Kappa said Monday. Debates have continued about what happened at Roswell. The U.S. Air Force said in 1994 the wreckage recovered in 1947 was most likely from a balloon-launched classified government project. And this is specifically our response to the whole balloon idea and theory. Stephen Bassett, head of the Paradigm Research Group, or PRG, which hosted the X Conference, said that the truth about extraterrestrial life is being suppressed because it is politically explosive. There is a third role in American politics, and that is the UFO question. It is many magnitudes more radioactive than Social Security ever dreamed to be, Bassett said. Here you see the workings of the government in full-blown display. Cover up, deny, and instead of telling the truth, lie. Mitchell has been relegated to the sidelines of history, and no member of the mainstream press is covering his story. This pattern fits a typical U.S. federal government response to anyone who dares to say anything against their policy of denial. Another astronaut, a Mercury and Gemini one, Colonel Gordon Cooper, explained in his book Leap of Faith. At Edwards Air Force Base, I was having some of the cameramen film precision landings. I saucer flew right over them, put down 3 landing gears, and landed out on the dry lake bed. They went out their cameras towards the UFO. They lifted off and flew off at a very high rate of speed. I had a chance to hold it, the film, up to the window and look at it. Good close-up shots. There was no doubt in my mind that it was made someplace other than on this earth. In my opinion, they were worried it would panic the public if they knew that someone had started telling lies about it. Then I think they had to cover that up with another lie, and I didn't know how to get out of it. He explained that the government lied and they knew they lied. The provocative statements were found buried in this book and never recovered by the press. On Sunday, February 28, 1960, the New York Times published a small article on page 30 of the front section of the paper. The 1966 article on a former CIA director being soberly concerned about UFOs, that director being Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, who was the first director of the CIA when it was originally created in 1947, serving as director until 1950. The New York Times article is as follows. The Air Force has sent its commands a warning to treat sightings of identified flying objects as serious business, directly related to the nation's defense. It was learned today. An Air Force spokesman confirmed issuance of the directive after portions of it were made public by a private flyer salsa group. The new regulations were issued by the Air Force Inspector General on December 24th. The regulations revising similar ones issued in the past outline procedures and said that the investigations and analysis of UFOs are directly related to the Air Force's responsibility for the defense of the United States. Committee reveals document and the sense of the document was revealed by the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. The Publicly Financed Committee accused the Air Force of deception and publicly describing reports of identified flying objects as delusions and hoaxes while sending a private admonition to its commands. Vice Admiral R.H. Hillenkoetter, a committee board member and former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, said in a statement that a copy of the Inspector General's warning had been sent to the Senate Science and Nationalities Committee. It is time for the truth to be brought out in open congressional hearings, he said. The Air Force confirmed that the document had been issued. A spokesman said it was put out by Major General Richard E. O'Keefe. acting Inspector General at the time, to call attention to revised Air Force regulations concerning identified flying objects. The statement was concluded in an operations and training pamphlet circulated at intervals to bring commands up to date. Pentagon aide said the new regulations, covering 7 printed pages, made no substantial change in policy, but had been rewritten as a matter of course. The Air Force investigated 6,132 reports of flying objects since 1947, including 183 in the last 6 months of 1959. The latest Air Force statement, issued a month ago, said no physical of material evidence, not even a minute fragment of so-called flying saucer, has ever been found. Admiral Coder said that behind-the-scenes high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about the UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe that unknown flying objects are nonsense, the retired admiral said. He charged that to hide the facts, the Air Force has silenced its personnel to the issuance of a regulation. The interesting thing about this article is that it quotes from Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter. He wasn't just an ordinary citizen. He was the first director of the CIA and one of the members of Truman's Majestic 12 Committee. In recent years, UFO field has been flooded with purported official documents, allegedly leaked by persons unknown within the American intelligence community. These documents have been very difficult to confirm or repudiate. The reason? When U.S. government agencies have been queried, they've either been unwilling to answer inquiries or have not known what they were supposed to do under federal law established for just such inquiries. In June 1987, the UFO research community tried very hard to confirm or repudiate what became known as the Majestic 12 briefing document. This document is allegedly a briefing paper that was prepared on November 18, 1952 by Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter for presentation to then President-elect Dwight D. Eisenhower. The document is said to be classified as top secret, and it dealt with American recovery operations of crashed UFOs. Every effort to validate the document by the UFO community has been unsuccessful. The FBI became aware of the document on December 15, 1988, when the Special Agent of the Air Force, Office of Special Investigations, or OSI, gave a copy of it to an FBI agent in Dallas, Texas. The FBI agent requested the Bureau discern if the document is still classified or not. It is interesting to note that in response to this request, FBI headquarters answered, and a cable dated December 2, 1988, the Office of Special Investigations, U.S. Air Force, advised on November 30, 1988, that the document was in fact fabricated. Copies of the document have been distributed to various parts of the United States. The document is completely bogus. It is very interesting caused by the fact that the U.S. federal government was trying to testify over, they were telling the truth over a matter that occurred over 40 years before. And no independent oversight group looked into this matter. The word of the U.S. federal government was simply good enough. And this draws us to our conclusion, in a sense, in this case, Your Honor. The document being declared bogus, one might believe that FBI would have no further interest in it. However, in a letter dated November 15, 1991, FBI headquarters informed the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations this. It is noted that although this document may represent some type of hoax, it is our responsibility to ensure that all incidents involving the mishandling of classified data receive adequate investigative attention. Therefore, we request that your agency attempt to ascertain the originator and or the current classification of the enclosed document. Almost 25 years later, no one has been charged with any involvement of wrongdoing, that is, fabrication or hoaxing this document. Moreover, in the military, it is illegal to falsify a document and pass it as a classified document. I ask why. To answer that question, let me ask you another. If you're investigating the U.S. federal government, would you ask the U.S. federal government for help? Of course not. If you're a prosecutor and you're trying to convict a person, would you take the words of the accused if they said that they didn't do it? Of course not. But this is what has happened in every step of the incident at Roswell. In 1994, the Congress had the GAO, or Government Accounting Office, look into Roswell. This is nothing more than looking at the same old government records and saying the case was closed. Plus by all the 8 logical fallacies that we brought up today, Your Honor. Plus by the fact that a blatant cover proves why 80% of Americans, and believe me when I say the government is both holding information and finally the public has a real right to know what is going on for all of these years. We pray that you find for the people and not a light of data finally appear on the records that have been released to the public. We ask you to find in favor of the petitioner, and both the government does have information about aliens. People have the right to know about this information. Thank you for your time. If there are no further questions, I will retire. We open ourselves up to questions about you, Mr. Kroth, if you have any for us.
No questions yet. What was the name of the CIA guy, the director in the first CIA director you quoted? Hagen?
Admiral Roscoe. Yes, Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkoetter, Mr. Kroth.
How do you spell that? Well, say his last name again.
Hillenkoetter.
Coder. Okay. All right, great. No more questions. Tell Michael Cunningham, what are we supposed to do next?
He could render a verdict. He could say what we said, or he could tell us a little. We could ask questions to him.
Okay,
So
well,
following,
I'll render my verdict and give you my opinions, if that's all right with you.
that's perfectly fine with us.
Okay, so let me start all from the very beginning with Tennessee. The first speaker, his talk was very, very well written. He was very articulate. I didn't like his talking about the flat Earth theory and the hollow Earth theory. It was an attempt to make this whole discussion seem ridiculous and absurd. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you said these were proven fakes and it had been convincingly explained, but you didn't give any reference or citation for that. So I felt that you were just trying to make your point forcefully without real evidence. I also didn't like the Frisbee metaphor because it was, again, making the whole discussion seem kind of stupid, that people might fall for this. What you did say that I think was interesting is that when you gave the example of the little girl in the closet, that motives are important, and you made a very good point about motivation. So well written, well spoken, and also the point that the scientific community has not been convinced. There are many members of the scientific community who have been convinced, but you're right in the sense that the vast majority of scientists have not been convinced. So you made a good point there. Now, the second speaker from Tennessee talked about yellow journalism and Roswell and Truman, and I really thought your quotation from Eisenhower was a very good one. I never came across that, and I don't know if he was lying or not, but the fact that you provided a quote by Eisenhower saying it's all bunk, it was good. You went through the Blue Book, Project Blue Book, and that was a well reference citation, the Robertson Panel. I thought you spent too much time on Trimington films, and you went into way too much detail on that. I didn't understand why you were doing that. I liked the comment about the paranoia of human nature.
Mm-hmm.
But however, you did skip some evidence. You said the government isn't hiding stuff, and there's quite a bit of evidence the government has hid stuff. Not just Roswell, but there's an incident called the Bentwaters incident that you should look at. All right, so that takes care of Tennessee. Now I'd like to comment about my reactions to Del Valle.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first speaker, Danielle Thompson. Where's Danielle Thompson? So there's Danielle with Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. So you made, it was very well written, very well researched. You really took Roswell apart piece by piece from Brazel, Jesse Marciel, Remy's telegram, and how we have now been able to read the words on that telegram. That was really, really well done. And I think you really brought out Roswell and made it come alive as one single incident where, there's certainly a good reason to believe something was going on here. So congratulations on that. Superb presentation. Roswell, Braciel, Delius Field, Remy's telegram, General Dubois. Nice. A little bit long, but very nice. Now the next speaker, who was your partner with the suit and tie, Jacob. Was that Jacob? Are you Jacob? Hi, are you Jacob?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. I can't hear you. Well, who the second person from wait a minute.
Joe
I think
Valle.
I got things wrong. Wait a minute. Here it is. This is Jacob. The SR-71.
No, that's Tennessee.
That's Tennessee. Right.
I think you presented some very good evidence when you quoted authorities. The other side said there's no competent authorities who say UFOs exist. You cited Edgar Mitchell. There are a number of people who were very informed who came forward and who said it. I think you made a very good point about the American public, 80% not believing the government. Let's see. The way you handled the SR-71 and that they were hiding knowledge from the American people, that it was harmful to society, that was interesting. I think your best point was the Majestic 12 issue. Here comes a document that you can't hear me. Go like this if you can hear me. Okay. The Majestic 12 piece that you did was really well done. I liked your discussion about logical fallacies. That was well constructed. I didn't follow some of them, but when you bring out a document, the Majestic 12 document, that was actually left on somebody's doorstep, and the FBI says, no, that's a hoax. And then you say, well, if it was a hoax, why is it classified? And why do they want to get it back? And what is so important about this hoax? I've seen the document. It looks very official to me. And I think you handled that very nicely. Now, we had another guy from Tennessee who was rebutting stuff. And he was their third speaker. I think I see him right now. He did a very good job of... He said, just because you can prove the government lies does not prove ETs, extraterrestrials, exist. That's a very good point. So just because you prove government lies doesn't necessarily prove your entire case. He also made a good point about hiding SR-71s and American technological innovations from the Russians. And why should the American government say UFOs exist when they're trying to hide other things? Are you hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Drake's, you went into Drake's equation a little bit. I didn't see how that had a lot of relevance to everything. So all in all, I think that the best points were on the Tennessee side, that just because you prove the government is lying doesn't mean UFOs exist. And they did provide evidence, empirical evidence, that UFOs have been refuted by Project Blue Book and other documents that they cited. So that's definitely a plus on their side. On the other side, Roswell is so well done, Majestic 12 is so well done, that these are really, and the fact that they provide you guys evidence of real people who are informed, who say they do exist, I think that the weight of evidence goes towards Del Valle. I have to admit that I wrote a book on this subject, so I'm a bit... Wait, Del Valle is the other guy that I'm talking about, the Roswell in this debate.
We understand. We're clapping for them.
Oh, you're clapping for them. That's good enough. But I'll tell you what, if I were to judge, if this was a basketball game or something, it would be like 97 to 92. It was very close. I just think that you did Roswell so well and Majestic 12 so well, and the other side really did not refute that as effectively as they could, and I don't know how they can, actually, except to say that President Clinton said, I looked into Roswell, I didn't see anything, I never found any evidence for it. They could have said that. There were other presidents, and President Truman maybe never said what they think he said, and the yellow journalists what they said. So it was a very close call, but I'm deciding for Del Valle. So all the best to both of you. You did a
Thank you.
Now I have to go because I have another appointment. I thought this was just an hour long. So will you be mad at me if I leave?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks for inviting me. Michael, thank you. Michael doesn't look like he's responding. Can you hear me, Michael? All right, goodbye. I'm saying goodbye. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, gotcha.
I was impressed with the way you guys presented.
Thank you so much for the opportunity today.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well,
We'll see you Monday, man.
Monday.
Very nice debating with you, and nice to meet you.
you too.
See you Monday. Okay, then. Well.
What, did they just hang up on us?